What's up, everybody? Once again, it is I, James, coming to you from the Nerdy Mewzings Podcast studio. Tonight, I am very excited to be joined on our 30th episode already by Mike from Lunch Money Comics. How you doing today, Mike?
I'm doing okay.
All right,
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure, man. Appreciate you being on. I know we've been trying to coordinate this for a little while, and we finally made it happen.
Yeah, happy we worked it out. Yeah, ever since I first bumped into you randomly at Rose City Comic Con.
I know, crazy. Yeah, that was funny. My wife was standing there. She's like, I recognize that guy's voice. And then I look over, like, oh, I know why. I always have your videos on playing in the background. It was
it was cool. A little surreal. But it was funny because, Dan's X-Men Comics was with me. It was just talking about you. And I didn't look up at you. So I was just talking to you because you were looking at some cool books. And then it was the whole realization. And Dan was behind me. It was just one of those random serendipitous moments. So, yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, I've been a fan of your channel for a long time, and I think my kind of first interaction with you prior to meeting in person was when Ryan, the Colossus Collector, was doing that Christmas stream, and I ended up winning the raffle for the books that you had on there, and that was actually my first time ever winning a raffle in my life, so that was pretty dang cool.
Remind me what they were. What were the books? I don't remember.
There was
the X-Men?
There was an X-Men. And then there was something with I think it had some kind of Simpsons cameo in it that was a holiday issue.
It was a holiday issue. First Bart Simpson. Yeah, that's right. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, cool stuff.
Yeah. Well, congratulations. Yeah, I completely forgot about that.
Speaking of cool stuff, you have a lot of cool books behind you that anybody who, is familiar with your channel gets to see on the regular, but it still blows me away every time I see it.
Yeah, me too. Honestly, I said this before on my channel. I've always collected comic books ever since I was a kid. I don't think a year's gone by where I didn't buy comics, but it definitely ebbed and flowed, right? There were the years in college I didn't really collect too much. I get into them for a while. But no matter what I did, I never had expensive comics. My whole thing, Lunch Money Comics, was buying cheap comics. I would find good ones cheap at, flea markets, yard sales, things like that. I'd never really started going to comic shows until Lunch Money Comics. And then when I did, it's funny how you start meeting people in the hobby. You find comics in strange places. You have collateral now. You start trading up, and then people know what you're looking for, and you make networking, and poof, all of a sudden I look behind me sometimes. So this is where I work. my home office down here, and I look over, I'm like, how did that happen? It happened like that. It seems like it's pretty crazy. Stuff I never dreamed in a million years I would have. I feel a little guilty about it, honestly, coming from my background.
Right.
But I definitely appreciate everything there. I don't take it for granted for 1 second.
Well, and I know you've received, a little bit of criticism here and there on the YouTube comments, which is to be expected anytime we're doing anything on YouTube. But like you were saying, the Lunch Money Comics thing, and now you're starting to pick up some pretty big books. So what's it been like, navigating that and kind of going with the flow when people are getting a little spicy on there?
Well, luckily for me, I would say 99.9999% of my viewers are fantastic. Let's say I ran a video of mine, I'll get 10,000 views. Only 100 people comment, and one of those might be negative. And usually they don't really affect me because they're usually just so silly, it doesn't bother you. But I mean, to do what we do, to put yourself out there, if you think you have a voice, that's great. Put yourself out there, but you need to have thick skin and you need to be prepared for that. However, like I said, compared to a lot of other YouTubers, I feel like in the comic space, a lot of my friends who are YouTubers, I have fantastic viewers, and I very, very rarely, in fact, I get a little embarrassed because sometimes when someone does chime in with something negative, there's 10 people just destroy that person. I'm like, whoa, guys, people are allowed to say their mind. I never delete comments, unless of course it's
the lunch money. Yeah. The Lunch Money mob goes after them.
Someone called them the lunch bunch. I was like, don't label it, but yeah, they go after him. But like I said, I've been very, very fortunate, and I don't delete comments unless it's something like that breaks the rules of YouTube.
Yeah.
You know, there's been a couple times like YouTube should have caught that. But on that, I always leave it there. You know, I like criticism, even if it's a little rude. You know, I try to take it at heart, you know, and say, is there a chance to grow here and make a difference and improve the channel? And yeah, so I don't mind those comments usually.
Well, that's a good way to be about it. I think you got to kind of let it roll off your back and just keep moving forward, doing your thing, especially when you're doing something you love and you're passionate about like this.
Yeah, if you think about it, I came across this. My channel really started growing. You're like, oh, it's just a number. It's just a number, like all the time. Doesn't really matter who's watching it. But then every once in a while, I'll have those moments. I'm laying in bed. I'm like, it freaks me out. I'm like, wait, that was a lot of people that watch my voice. You know, they see my face. And if you really think about it, it'll freak you out. So I just don't think about it. I just do the same thing all the time. It doesn't make me change the way I do my videos. I just keep doing what I do. And I just try not to think about it. Easier said than done, but I'm trying.
Speaking of your channel, you just recently won an award, didn't you?
I did. Yeah, that was very shocking too.
Another surreal moment, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, the comic book community awards. Something put on by a couple people. Brian LCS is one of them. Yeah, they've been doing them for years, evidently. And I only heard about it for the first time like a year and a half ago, maybe. And I wasn't really eligible for many of the categories. But then all of a sudden this year I was nominated, and I didn't really expect to win any of them because I was in categories with like people have been doing this for years and years and years. You know, like legends and yeah. So I was shocked to win favorite channel. Over 5,000.
Now, is this something where fans go and vote, like people go and vote on it, or is it something that the people that put that together decide?
So it's all votes, which is something I haven't been like publicly critical of it. I'm skeptical of things like that because, you know, you can just ask people. You go on Facebook and be like, hey, friends and family, you know, go and vote. I think it matters more when it's people in the hobby. And because of that, and maybe it's me being a little holier than thou, or I didn't want to be too self-important, I refused to promote it on my channel. I didn't want to do it. I just felt weird doing it. I was like, people vote for me, they vote for me, that's fine. But some friends might threaten that they would do it if I didn't. So I did a quick little post on like Instagram, like, thank you for everyone who nominated me. So, but it's just votes. So that's why I think it was even more shocking because I didn't want to make a big deal of it. And it's still, people still chose to vote for me. So it felt special, but I was like completely shocked. I did not expect it. So, yeah. So,
congratulations again, man. Too cool. So going back to when you were a kid and you were picking up comics, what was your jam? What were the ones that you were really excited about picking up off the shelves back in those days?
Right. So my primary love is X-Men. You know, that's been like the first thing I really got into back then. Spider-Man was a close second, and then probably Daredevil. But X-Men was it. You know, I loved X-Men. I also loved when I got into collecting that 2099 series, though, the futuristic Marvel series. So like the first series I bought completely and read the whole series was X-Men 2099. I still have them all.
I think I have one on my spinner rack over there.
There you go.
Pretty sure, yeah.
The
Spider-Man
blue cover.
2099 and that one, yeah.
Yeah, I love them all. So that was me. I was always X-Men. But, you know, the other thing was, you know, the reason my channel is called Lunch Money Comics, and I've mentioned this on my channel a couple times, but it's because, you know, I really didn't have much money as a kid. We were a pretty poor family. I never asked my parents for money, so I would just basically not eat lunch and save up the money to get enough to get like 1 or 2 comic books. So I couldn't really be picky. Well, I actually had to be very picky, but like it was whatever really spoke to me, I stuck with because, you know, like I didn't have that much money. I couldn't buy everything. I just knew I liked X-Men. I stuck with the X-Men books. But there'd be times where I didn't have enough money to get the next issue and I had to jump a couple. So it wasn't like a perfect sequence of the run. And, but yeah, I mean, and that's why I think a lot of like the way I still search for comic books, it's even though I have, you know, I don't have really money problems now. I'm an adult with disposable income, but I still think in regards to like collectibles, I'm still very cheap. I still have that mentality of like, well, the comic books, like, you know, protect your money, be good with your money, get something you really, really love and that you'll really cherish. And I still collect the same way now as I did back then in a lot of ways.
Now, were you somebody that was attracted to the stories more than the art, or was it a little bit of both for you? Did you have like artists that you followed from book to book, or were you more about the characters than the story?
For me, it was the characters. I would say characters first more than even story. Certainly not really the art. And the biggest reason for me on that is because, you know, I had the Marvel trading cards. One of the things that got me into a lot of people our age, that was like their first introduction to like Marvel. And I had comic books before I saw the cards, but I didn't know who the characters were. All of a sudden now I have this perfect encyclopedia. You flip over the cards, you see their stats, you see their origin. It all of a sudden made sense. And there were characters I gravitated to. A lot of them were X-Men. I loved Nightcrawler's my favorite character. Gambit, I was huge into, especially when the animated series came out. I loved all the X-Men characters. So for me, it was characters first. If it was the X-Men, I loved them, or Spider-Man. And then, yeah, the stories thusly would be pretty good because it featured my favorite characters.
Yeah.
That was first and foremost. So I'd buy anything that had like Nightcrawler, and he was an Excalibur when I started collecting as a kid.
Yeah,
So
I remember
that's what
those.
annoyed me. Yeah, he wasn't an X-Men, so I had to collect the X-Men and Excalibur. I alternated. So
Yeah.
So that's mine. And I didn't really know artists too much. I knew who Jim Lee was, you know, and that was about it. So
Jim
I
Lee.
wasn't. Yeah.
Gotta celebrate a special shirt for the 30th because they're doing the new Hush
Oh yeah.
series next year. Yeah, he's doing
I heard
coming
about
back and doing another Hush run. So yeah,
Awesome.
had
There
to
you
be a fanboy and get the shirt. I've always been
Perfect.
a big Jim Lee fanboy. So
Oh yeah. I mean, you look at Jim Lee art. I mean, there's very few things that transport me back in time that quickly. You know, those Marvel trading cards certainly do. But Jim Lee art, I hate to say it because I don't like his style. No one does. Rob Liefeld, same thing. Rob Liefeld,
Yeah.
when I see his art, like that is seared into my brain in that early mid '90s. You know, like I see it and I'm just like, I'm 12 years old all over
takes
again.
you back, doesn't
It
it?
does. It's like immediate. So Jim Lee's just one of those guys, man. It's always it's a little time machine that he provides.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool.
So you're like the third person I've had on recently that mentioned that the trading cards were kind of what got you deeper into things. I think that's really cool. I have a bunch of those too. I think kind of all of us that were collecting in the 90s and stuff had those, you know, those cards, and you'd look at the stats and the description of the characters, and it was very cool.
I met Joe Jusko at a comic show, and I had a couple of, you know, cards and stuff for him to sign. And I wanted to talk to him, like, hey, your Marvel masterpieces like made a big impact on my life. And he smiled. He's like, everyone your age tells me that. Like, every single person, you know, like it was about 40 years old, that was their introduction. They love those cards. And he said, and he was joking. He's like, for me, I was rushed. You know, he didn't have much time. He didn't love how it came out because they only gave him like a couple days. You know, he paints them. So like they're painted portraits. They only had a couple days. And he hated the work. Yet he says it's his biggest legacy is all the people who were, you know, kids in those early 90s when they came out. They lived and died by him. So it's pretty cool to see how impactful. I mean, that was Marvel's plan, right? That's what the idea was. And did it work? You know, they leveraged
really
the whole
worked,
collectible market and sports cards, and it completely worked. So props to them.
Now, I get the feeling that you probably have the collector gene. Like I've seen you do dabble in antique stores and stuff like that as well. So I'm the same way, man. I have like so many collections. When I was a kid, it was sports cards and coins and everything else. Like I think some of us just have that, and it spirals into all these different areas. If
100%.
we're lucky, we
100%.
narrow it down to a couple, but it can get pretty out in the weeds there.
Well, I will say I collect so many things. It's kind of silly. And since really Lunch Money Comics started becoming like a bigger part of my life, comic books have been like first and foremost. Like I barely collect any of the others. So I still keep my eyes open. When I go to flea markets, I'll buy comic books and show them on the channel. I don't show all the other antiques I get.
Right.
But, you know, I've showed a basement tour. My other room over here is just full of antiques. It looks like a museum. Board games over here. I still have my coin collection as a kid. But the one thing that did change, you know, during COVID, the lockdown when collectibles went up, people started collecting again like crazy. I actually got rid of a lot of stuff. There were a lot of like collections and Star Wars stuff that I loved, but I was like, you know, I'm going to get rid of them. And then I'm looking at all the stuff and I'm like, I'm not getting rid of comic books. That's like my biggest guilty pleasure is comic books. So I got rid of everything else, and I used some of that money to buy my first giant size X-Men #1. And that was sort of a big moment. But it goes to show, like, yes, we have the collecting gene. Doesn't mean you have to be married to that stuff forever.
Correct.
But some things stick. Some things, there's just an itch that's there, and this is my guilty pleasure, right? I say these are the safest things I collect, the most mainstream things I collect. This stuff's kind of weird, and people are like, "Oh, you're nuts." But this has always been the thing that I literally had in a closet. People would see all the antiques and all the cool, my fossil collection and minerals, and my, I have a skull collection. I have crazy stuff. World War II artifacts. But I always had in the closet all my comic books stacked up. And no one could see them. I would go in there and, rifle through them at night when I was looking. So now it's out in the open. I'm out of the closet now. Everyone knows. I wear it on my sleeve.
I'm trying to get to that stage. I have a pretty obscure collection that probably nobody would ever think would be of value. So, a lot of people know I'm a jiu-jitsu guy. That's my profession. That's what I've been doing for my livelihood for over 21 years now. And in jiu-jitsu, certain brands of the gi, the jiu-jitsu uniform, are collectible. Yeah. And I happen to have been sponsored by one of the most popular brands since like 2008. So they're like the Nike of jiu-jitsu. Wow. Nice. And so I've used selling some of those to facilitate my comic book habit.
Nice. Is it a big market for secondhand geese?
It's crazy, man.
Wow.
People literally collect them like they would Jordans or something.
Really?
Yeah, because they're limited batches. Like the older ones, they only made a certain amount, and I'm a pretty obscure size since I wear the biggest size they make. So it's like sought after.
Right.
Yeah. So it's really interesting.
My son does jiu-jitsu now, and
awesome.
his instructor, I should ask him. He's a cool guy. I'm wondering if he's into that. I mean, the funny thing with him is whenever he does demos, he doesn't even wear a gi like half the time.
Okay.
If it's out and about. When he's in the dojo, he does. But like when he's doing demos for the kids, I should ask him about it. And my son, the problem with him is he's growing like a weed. I'm a short guy. There's a picture of you and I standing next to each other. You're probably a foot and a half taller than me. But my son gets my wife's jeans, and he's 12, and he's almost as tall as me, and we just can't keep up. Like his gi, his pants are like at half.
That's the struggle.
Already. Oh, it's like, and he grew like literally like 4 inches this year. So we are going through gis like.
Yeah, man. We always when we enroll a new child student, we try to put them in one that's a little too long on them, just so the parents aren't having to buy a new one every couple of weeks.
Yeah, but he looks ridiculous. That's why it's like, he's a scrawny kid, so it kind of looks baggy. And then you look at his legs, and you're like, yeah, dude. At least he's not gonna trip. He's not gonna step on. He's kind of clumsy. He's at that age, but that's cool.
Yeah, the jiu-jitsu uniforms, I brought myself to letting go of some of those, but I still have way too many. And I have not brought myself. You mentioned the Star Wars stuff, and that broke my heart just a tiny bit inside. I haven't had the heart to be able to get rid of any of mine yet. My connection with it is my mom's still alive and everything, but it was like our connection, like me and my mom, because she collected it, and then she gave me her collection. So that one's near and dear. I did get rid of a few Generation 1 Transformers when the first live action movie came out way back when. But yeah, I'd like to start, paring down and putting it more to comics, because I'm the same way now. Like the comics are my main focus, main priority when it comes to collecting these days.
Right. I mean, it was kind of a tough decision for me, because if you went back like 20 years or even like 15 years, I probably would have said I was a bigger Star Wars fan than a comic fan at one point in time. But that was almost exclusively from a gaming standpoint. So I played the old Decipher Star Wars card game when I was in the 90s, and I was really good at it. I actually won a New England regional, and then I got into the Star Wars miniatures. I was actually ranked 10th in the world. I went to the World Finals. Like that was in the 2000s, and I was really into that stuff. And that was same thing. I'm like, I'm never getting rid of this stuff. I had all my Kenner stuff. But same thing, like during that COVID thing, I was looking at them. I saw how much I could get, and then I kind of felt, well, I'll get rid of a little bit. I'll keep the best of the best stuff for me. Yeah. And then I saw how much I was getting, and then I threw it up on one of the, Facebook marketplace, kind of like this one just for these types of things, and people went crazy. I was like, you know what? I guess I saw dollar signs. But honestly, as much as it kind of broke my heart, and I was reliving these things as I was packaging them up to send them away forever. Yeah. I didn't miss them after they were gone. I didn't miss them, and honestly, I know for a fact that that would have been different if it was my comic books.
Yeah,
I wouldn't have been able to do it.
I think I'm probably the same way with you right there. Yeah, I look at my comics all the time. I haven't looked in this closet full of Star Wars stuff in a very long time.
That's exactly what it was. And again, the games are cool because I show my son how to play them, and and they were cool. I'm like, oh, this is really, really neat. And then I was looking at them, and I'm thinking, this deck of cards is worth like $2,000. Like, what am I doing? Like, I'm just gonna put it away again, right? So yeah, I didn't feel that bad moving on with them after they were gone. Once they left the house, I felt a lot better. Once you get the paycheck, you're like, okay, I can live with that. But that's it. Comic books, no way. And honestly, I hate to say this. I don't want to get into this debate, but like Star Wars has kind of let me down in the last.
I'm right there with you, brother. Yeah, same. I think us old school, original trilogies fans, struggle a little bit with some of the newer stuff. Like there's probably been some hits, but a few more misses than hits lately. So, yeah.
It's the indifference. I don't hate it. I just feel like I'm kind of different. A new show comes out, I'm like, I don't need to watch it right away.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
it's
I hate to
really
say
interesting.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, and who would have thought we would have had like more Star Wars content than we could ever consume? Like a new
More than we need.
series.
I know.
Yeah, I think that's part of it too, right?
Well, I mean, we had all of the content, but it was just in different ways. It wasn't movies. It was books. It was video games
Comics
in the
and
90s.
books and
Comics,
the
right?
games,
And I
yeah.
loved that extended Legends universe. I loved it. You know, that because that's all we had, right? And we lived through like what happens after Return of the Jedi and Luke's Jedi Order and the Yuzon Vong
Yep.
invasion, all that stuff. Like I was really into all that stuff, and a lot of the games I played were based on that. And when Lucasfilm bought it and they basically said none of that happened, I was kind of like, well, I really like that.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like the parts of the new movies I like Rogue One. I definitely dug Rogue One.
Rogue
you
One
know?
was great, yeah.
Yeah. So, but most of them I feel just like, it's not quite the same.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the channel and how that came to be. Was that a result of the pandemic? Did that kind of spring from there? Or was it something you had been thinking about doing for a while and then you kicked it off?
It was a random, I woke up one day and I'm like, I'm going to see if I can do it. No, because like what had happened was, you know, as I was getting back into comic books, I'm like, I'm definitely keeping these. I started like just like saying, okay, I want to collect some of the things I've always wanted since I was a kid, right? So I started collecting more. I started watching comic book YouTubers. And the thing that kind of bummed me out was, and this is not, I mean, all these guys are great. I know a lot of these people are my friends, but a lot of the comic book YouTube channels at the time, during the comic boom, you know, we're talking about speculation of comics and the value of comics and graded comics. And I'm watching this stuff and I'm thinking, I don't collect comics like that at all. Like I go to flea markets and I find like amazing books that are worth hundreds of dollars. I find them for $5. I'm never going to grade them. Like, why would I do that? I was watching all of these things that were about the hobby, about the money aspect, but no one was really talking about comic books and the love of them or the fact that you can buy them cheap.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, I like going out and finding these things in the wild, and I just like talking about the books. I had no one to talk to. I had no friends had one friend who was into comic books as a kid. He lives like in Arizona. And so I just, I'd had some really good luck in the summer of 2022. This is after COVID, you know, once all the flea markets opened back up, I was just killing it. I kept finding great stuff. And I had one of those epiphanies. I was like, you know what? I felt like 90% of YouTube channels were catering to the top 10% of collectors. I'm like, I'm going to make a channel about like the one I want to see, which is just the everyman collector. You don't need to spend a ton of money for these comic books. You can find them in the wild. So as a pilot, I went out and I went to a local indoor flea market. And luckily where I am in New England, we're surrounded by flea markets.
Yeah, you guys have some amazing flea markets out there, man. I'm always jealous when I see those videos. Because the ones around here, like you can't find any good comics at them. They're always gone.
Oh, they're expensive. Yeah,
they're super expensive.
You know, every weekend all year round we have multiple comic shows. You know, a lot of it's population density. But because you have so much population density, you have so many comic book shops in every town nearby, things are more competitive. Like prices tend to be cheaper because if you don't like the price in one place, go to the next town over and get them.
Yeah.
And we have all the flea markets and the antique shops. So I went to the next town over has a couple of indoor flea markets. I knew they had comic books. I went and, found a couple of nonsense comic books, brought them back to here. This room and talked about them. And I just wanted to see how long it would take me. Like, what's the fastest I could do it? I told myself if I can do it like in an afternoon, maybe I would try it. So I did. I went out. I did not intend for it to ever be aired as a pilot, right? In fact, when I started speaking, I think I said something like, welcome to another video on Lunch Break Comics. There was no other video. There was only one, right? So I did it, and I actually did it again with my son. We recorded the intro with my wife, my son, just to put it up there. I came up with the name. Wasn't going to intend to see the light of day. I made 3 videos just for pilot. Okay, now we'll start the channel. And I decided, I think my wife brought it up. She's like, you put all that time into those 3 videos. Just throw them on there. Who cares? So I did. Threw them up. They started doing well, 100 views. I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. And then that's 4th really video,
good,
someone down the street was having a yard sale, and they posted about it on the town forum. They had comic books. My wife saw it, told me. I called them to ask them what they had. He invited me over, and it was like an incredible score. Not only did it have incredible comic books at this, yard sale, I was getting to go through his garage beforehand. When I brought all the books up to him, I'm like, how much for all these? And there was like $100 books in there, and he's like, like 50 cents each. And I looked at him like, no way, dude. And I said, I'm going to give you 100 just for these couple, and I'll get more money and come back. And he was so blown away by that. He ended up selling me everything really cheap. And I did a 2-parter on that. In those 2 videos, 3 weeks into the channel start, just exploded. And a couple of guys, Alex the Comic Quarter, another YouTuber, saw that video. He posted on his channel. People saw it, and it was like, I had 1,000 subs in 3 weeks. Like, it was crazy. And it wasn't just the score. I think people really resonate with the honesty and the message. Like, you can find these anywhere. but be good to people, like be honest, like, and it was so the opposite of what people were seeing with all the negativity on YouTube. Otherwise, they saw people hoarding money and getting
ripping
really cheap comments, ripping people off because they were getting the values all about the money. I'm like, no, it's not. It's not about the money at all. It's about having good networks. And that's the thing. Like, this guy, I actually became friends with him. He had more comic books, and a year later, he let me go through the rest of his stuff, and that's where I got, Hulk 181. Same guy. It's the thing. I was honest with him. I told him it was worth thousands of dollars, and he sold it to me for a great price. I could have bought it for $1, and I was like, no way.
I was actually gonna. I'm glad you brought that up, because that was actually something I wanted to bring up, because when I saw that video where you did get the 181, that was when it really resonated with me, and I knew I wanted to have you on this podcast, and I knew I was a huge fan of your channel because of that honesty and that respect you showed that gentleman. Because I think in the video you said he was like, oh, I was gonna do it for 75 or something when you told him it was worth a lot, and you're like, no.
I had to cut it. So that footage you'll see, like, I do sort of like a slow transition usually, but that's a quick cut because he swore so loudly. I had to cut it. He couldn't believe it. He was shaking. So and again, and listen, and that's the thing. I people always ask, like, a lot of people like, I wouldn't have been able to do that. It's like, but can you sleep at night? Like, for me, like, I wouldn't have been able to. Like, it just doesn't seem right. I wouldn't be able to live with myself, and I just think it's the right thing to do. Like, truthfully, and I always say this: you won't get the best deals if you're always honest, honestly. But you will get more opportunities, because my reputation now is Mike is honest. If people ask me about collections, I'll tell them truthfully what they're worth, what I'm willing to pay, and people really respect that. And I think that's the only way to really treat our fellow human beings. Like,
I agree, and I think it all comes back around. So you're putting a lot of good out there, and good comes back to you. So I really like to see that your channel's doing well, because I think it speaks volumes for what you're doing. So that's really special.
Well, the one more thing I will add is, this is something I always occurs to me. Again, you're putting yourself out there, right? The world's going to see this. Unless you take these videos down, they exist forever.
Yes.
So one thing I always think about is my kids. Maybe it's in 10 years, maybe it's never, maybe it's when I'm long gone. They'll be able to look back and watch Slush Money Comics, and I want them to see those messages. I tell them, my son comes down here, and he knows the story with this book. He knows that guy, Andy, I got it from, who's a sweetheart and gives my son stuff, cool books that he liked. And like, it's a message for my kids. Like, that's the legacy you leave, right? If people are watching back that video, are you making something you feel proud of at the end of the day? I do feel proud of what I've created. I do it just for fun, just try to build a hobby. But I feel like you have to be proud of what you made. You have to, at the end of the day, feel like it's something my kids could watch. I don't swear on my channel ever. I just want it to be something that kids can watch, and there's a good message there. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
No, that's great.
Hopefully not.
Yeah, the 181, that's definitely a grail book for me, just like I know it is for a lot of other people. I was excited actually down at that Rose City Rose City Comic Con, where we bumped into one another at that con. I ended up getting Hulk 180 from a gentleman down there. So I was real excited, because technically first appearance, even though it's not considered industry-wide as the first appearance, but
the 181's the money book, but 180 is absolutely first.
Yeah, because you got that nice panel with him in there. He's named and everything. Yeah,
I have the ugliest copy of 180 right there. It is covered in writing from some kids, missing the Marvel value stamp. Someone wrote Hulk over and over again all over the cover, but
nice.
It's fantastic. I mean, that last panel's still there. Who cares? I can open it up and look at it. It's kind of cool. Maybe I'll upgrade it someday, but it's a special thing to have.
Now, at what point in your journey did you start getting into graded books? Because for me, like I had some trepidation about going down that rabbit hole, because I knew once I did, I was going to like really want to get more of them, which I did end up getting quite a few. So at what point in your collecting did you do that? Because for me, I'm a lifelong collector like you. I took some breaks and everything, but when I started collecting again about a year or two ago, I bit the bullet and I went out, and some of the books that were special to me, it didn't even necessarily need to be something super valuable or a key issue, but I would go and I would find a nice graded copy, and then it spiraled to where they're now a couple short boxes full of them.
Oh, wow. I mean, that's an interesting question, because, despite what you see behind me, like, that's all of my slab books. I might have like two that are not right there. I don't like slabs. I mean, people are surprised when I say that. But the big book I got was Giant Size X-Men #1 slab, because like I thought that was the only way you can buy expensive books. You knew what it was. It was a guaranteed thing. And I didn't love it. Like I was like, whatever, I can't ever open it.
I
But sure, this is
I
the
want to be able
industry.
to I want to be able to look through my
Yeah,
books. So
100%.
that like anything I get, like I get like a digital copy on
Right.
Comixology, or
Oh yeah.
if it's one I might have a physical copy of, so I can
Right.
have it to look through. But
Right. Like I have all
yeah,
the reprints, so that's
yeah,
not a big deal. But it's the principle behind it, I guess. But then what happened was when I had that yard sale find that guy that for initial one, I was like at the time, like I said, I didn't want to make a channel about speculation and stuff like that and about money, but I also like didn't really know exactly what I was doing. I was worried about running out of content, and I knew people did unboxings and people did this thing. So I'm like, hey, let me do this, but I want it to be a story. I want it to be different than everyone else. So I said, here's what we can do. I have these comics I found at a garage sale. I have a buddy of mine I met just from in the area who's a fantastic cleaner and presser. Let's just see if garage sale comics that you find for, a couple dollars can be pressed and graded. I thought it'd be a cool video. So that's what we did. My buddy Jeff did that, and we sent some in. And some of them were just ones I thought were like cool,
yeah,
and I saw them and it was neat. It was a cool video, but like I remember like kind of feeling a little dead inside. I was like, I don't really like doing this. So then I kind of resolved I would only ever do it for expensive books. So there were
right,
a couple of big books I got in that were raw. Same thing. I'm like, I want to preserve them, especially if they're legacy books I hand down. I do think one of the best things about slab books is it preserves them, and you know what it is. It's a known quantity. You know what it's worth. You
yeah,
know what you can sell it for. Especially if it's something you want to hand down. I'm not going to burden them with a box of raw comic books that people can just kind of guess. So I did it a couple more times. I did unboxings, but I decided I would only ever do a CGC submission, which is like only once a year, if that, if there was a story to tell. So I usually do a cleaning and pressing story with it, or something like that. I've only done it a couple times. I have bought several of these, already slab, but in general, yeah, I don't love them. I don't do it very often, despite what you see. It's the nature
yeah.
of the hobby for higher end books. And again, when I have the connections I do, when I end up getting stuff, it's funny how often, hey, you're interested in a first Luke Cage? I'm
Yeah.
like, I didn't need it slab, but since you have it and it's a deal I can't refuse, there it goes on the shelf. I wasn't looking for a slab, but it just ended up that way. So
Yeah,
that's what a lot of these are actually.
that's what I transitioned to with it after getting the few ones that had sentimental value. Then it was like, okay, if it's a valuable, like a, first appearance of Vision or something like that, then
Right.
I'll get it graded. But
Right.
yeah, same thing.
I say my threshold is probably like $400 or $500. If it's less than that, I wouldn't think to do it.
Yeah,
Like the Hulk 181, I did it just for the YouTube content. Everyone saw that video. It did really well. I'm like, and everyone's wondering, oh, you going to grade it? What's it going to be? I'm like, that's the video. All right, let's have
let's
Jeff
find
Comic
out.
Spa clean it up. Yeah, that's exactly what it was. It was content more for the masses than for myself. It is an expensive book. I'm happy it's slab, but yeah, it was mostly like, oh, people are interested and they're asking for it. All right, I'll do it.
Yeah, Comic Spa. I hear that name all the time. Like it
Oh
sounds
yeah.
like he does really good work.
Oh, he's incredible. And and again, he just works on his own out here in Western Massachusetts. I met him through a couple books I found at flea markets. I had him work on, and then I mentioned him to other people. I mentioned him on my channel, and then now the other people started using him and realized how good he actually is. But his wait list now is like 40 weeks long. So I
Wow.
feel bad. Yeah, but people are willing to wait. He just says, hey, don't send them to me. I don't want them sitting in my house. I'll let you know when you're up. And yeah, they'll send him in. He just does incredible work. He doesn't even does aqueous baths where he'll take the book apart and put it in water. I did a whole video on that.
Scares me, man. It
It's
scares
crazy
me.
to
The
watch.
idea of doing it, like in getting to the point where you're doing that, I'm so impressed by people that
Oh, it's
gain
unreal.
that skill set and are able
Just
to
to
do.
start doing it, right? Like, how do you
Yeah.
decide? Like, yeah, I'm gonna try this. I'm gonna rip the book apart. I didn't rip it apart. He's very, very careful. He's very
Yeah.
practiced hands. But yeah, we did that on a couple of books. We did it with the first Werewolf by Night. You can't really see. Oh, there it is.
There it is.
For that book there, I did a cool trade at a big comic show, and then I thought it was stained. Asked Comic Spot. He's like, oh, you got to do an aqueous bath. I'm like, well, if you're gonna do it, might as well film it. And if we're gonna do that, we got to really quantify how much of an improvement it is. We might as well grade it. Same thing. So then I decided it would be a longer form video about the whole process, just for fun. Just for
Yeah.
fun, for anyone who think it was interesting. And it was more for him. It was more of a Comic Spot video. But it was fun. People liked it because it was different. I thought it was educational. So
One trend that I'm noticing, coming up in a lot of the episodes I've done here, is this community, like this special community, and making these connections with people like other collectors and like you with Comic Spa and these people that you meet through doing this. And, I like Dan's X-Men comics, Colossus Collector, like all of you guys are running these same circles. I just had Brandon from Mon Comics on, you know, just like
you're naming all my boys.
I'm telling you, man, it's like if I want to know a good person to have on, I just look within that group. It's really neat. Did you expect when you started getting into this that you would make these great like long-lasting friendships that you have?
No way. No, and I get it. I say this, like when I started the channel, it was really because, not just because I wanted to make the channel I wanted to see, it's because I had no one to talk to. Like I just wanted to talk to the ether, talk to nobody, and people started responding back. Like people like, I had that book, that was cool. Hey, I collected like you did. I was poor as a kid, and then you're like, okay, I started knowing these people, and then you got a lot of people like Brandon from On Comics. He actually, the reason I know him was he saw me mention Comic Spa. He contacted Comic Spa. I had him work on a book.
Okay, see.
And started talking with him, and then hooked up with me and decided to start his own channel because of Lunch Money Comics. And then I had lots of other people reach out, and it caused like a chain reaction. Then the people he knew, and then eventually we kind of ended up with a couple of chat threads. And before you know it, like, see, like you asked me on, like other people like, hey, we want to have Lunch Money Comics on. I'm like, okay, I've never done it before. I say no to, I say yes to everybody. Don't think, I love doing this stuff. Like if people are gonna host me, you're gonna feel courteous enough to ask me. I'd love to say yes. So everyone asked me, I jumped on, and everybody you hit off with them. Like even after the camera shuts off, we end up talking for like half an hour about growing up, what you collected. Next thing you know, we're all friends on a chat thread on Instagram. And then the next thing you know, hey, I go to Terrificon every year. Who else wants to go? Let's all go. And everyone flew out. And I mean, it was the best time.
Dude.
And then when I visited Portland, my sister lives out there. I have a ton of friends in the Pacific Northwest, like an incredible amount. So I'm like, I'm going to go out, visit my sister, go to the comic show, and hang out with all those guys in the Pacific Northwest. And it felt like I was in New England. Like, it's crazy. Like, you just bump into people, and it's like, I feel like I've been friends with these people, because we all come from the same place, right?
Exactly.
All roughly the same age. We all have the same similar origin story. That's the that's the connection initially. But then you get to know each other, and you're like, we're all just pretty cool guys. It's been special. Yeah.
Well, speaking of Terrificon, you guys had a pretty surreal Walt Simonson experience. And you have a lot of cool comics and things back there, but one of the coolest things in your collection that I've seen recently is that menu that grab it. Everybody make sure you watch the video version on this part, because this is one of the coolest, like most unique signed items I've ever seen.
Yeah. So the story behind this is, we're at Terrificon. It's at Mohegan Sun, huge resort casino. We're all staying there, right? And there was like one breakfast joint that we really liked, just like a diner, right? Like a greasy spoon diner in the casino. And that second day, and we were up late, little hungover, a little bit of gambling for some people. And I was like, I felt awful. Like I got no sleep. I was in bad shape. So we ended up going down. It was just four of us initially. We're getting in line to see a table. And Walt Simonson walks up behind us, and I'd met Walt Simonson before at Terrificon. He's a wicked nice guy. He'll talk your ear off if you bump into him. And that's the cool thing about Terrificon, is that like these guys all stay in the hotel. So you ride the elevators with them and stuff, So he's behind us, and I think it was Dan. Dan's actually, he's like, oh, should we ask him? I'm like, I said, Dan, if you ask him, he'll say yes. And he did. He asked him, he's like, sure. So we bought him breakfast, texted our other friends. They came down, they said hi. But then it ended up being the next morning, which is like the last morning, we all sat down again, all 12 of us or whatever. And sure enough, he walks in. We nabbed Ryan, the Colossus Collector, nabbed him. We bought him breakfast. And there was Ricky from All Sorts of Words had the idea to encapsulate it. He grabbed a menu from the place called Tom's, literally greasy, like it's covered in grease. And I pulled it out of this little sleeve here. And all of us that were there signed it. So, of course, Walt signed it right at the top of that famous scrawl there at the
dinosaur signature.
Always, exactly. And then you have, Rohan and JP from Absolute Game of Nerds, myself, of course, Big B McFly, Up North Comics, Colossus Collector, Dan's X-Men Comics, Ricky, All Sorts of Words, Mon Comics, and Mr. Akins from that What's on the Comic Rack. So cool. We all signed it, and we decided, and they gave it to me. Again, I don't just because, because it was my home turf, I guess, But I feel guilty having it. So when someone gets a big book or something big happens in their life, I'm going to send it to them. So this is going to be like the Stanley Cup, right? We're going to pass it around. Go. So that's I'm waiting for someone to do something really special to send it along. Hopefully around Christmas time. Cool. So this is the best thing I got at Terrificon. One of the best things I ever got in my life. And like I said, all those connections you make, encapsulated right here. I mean, it's cool that Walt signed it, but it's even cooler. Like
plus just that core memory. a core memory
It's a
that you're going to take with you the rest of your life. You know, that's something that can't be purchased. So
Right.
that's
Exactly.
really cool.
Right. It's the only one. It's the only one in the world, and it'll always remind me. It's always gonna be special. And hey, maybe we're planning on doing some other stuff. I think we might do Heroes Con in North Carolina. That might be on the menu next year, and like some other people might fly in. So say, hey, maybe we'll make some other memories like that.
Nice.
And see what we can do. And then those guys on the last day, some of those guys from the Pacific Northwest weren't flying out until Monday. Walt Simonson showed up again. Same diner. They were down there and hung out with the Pacific Northwest, the Portland guys. Got to hang out with them again. So it was pretty cool.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So with the channel now, it's obviously gotten a lot bigger, probably than you anticipated. What kind of demands are you putting on yourself as far as shooting content? A lot of people don't realize how long editing this stuff takes and all of that. I'm assuming you're doing that yourself still and everything.
Yep.
So what's that been like? Have you put a little more added pressure on yourself, or is it still staying fun for you and you just kind of stay regimented with it and try to get out ahead of it as much as you can?
That's the $1 million question, because like I said in the beginning, I just wanted to see if I could do it quickly. That wasn't sustainable. Like once you start doing better, like I can't get away with doing like a quick edit. I have too much. I am a perfectionist, right? So like for me, I spend a ridiculous amount of time editing. I've spoken to all my other YouTuber friends, except for Colossus Collector and that amazing Terrificon intro, which he did, the Avengers Endgame. I spend more time in editing than anyone I know. But that being said, I also resolved early. At the very beginning of my channel, I'm like, I'm only going to do one a week. Sometimes I end up with extra footage. I'll do two. I always do Monday, maybe one on a Friday. Yeah, I could do more. I said, I'm not going to do it because that'll burn me out. And I don't want to do less because it messes up with the algorithms. It seemed like it was working one a week. So I stuck with that. And no matter how many views I get and how many subscribers, I don't change it. Like I just do the same thing. The only thing I will say is that, again, I do more shows and stuff. And I am willing now and have the means to get bigger books and I have better connections. So I do have more videos where I'll show off like a bigger book. I feel more comfortable doing that than I did initially, where it was all about cheap books.
Right.
That's really the only difference, but that's a progression of my collecting more than a progression of the channel, if that makes sense. But no, I don't change anything. Like I said, like no matter how many people view my videos, I don't change anything. Like I just do, what am I going to do? Sometimes I go out to like a yard sale and I get like $10 in comic books. I'm like, yeah, it's a video. Yeah, I do it. That's who cares, right? It's the same thing. It scratches that itch, and so no, I don't change anything. But there are times, I keep expecting to wake up one day and be like, I'm not going to make a video. Like I keep waiting for that to happen, or getting worried I'm going to run out of content. Earlier this fall, actually, like last month, I was at a point where I was like, I'm always out a couple of weeks, and I wasn't. I was out 1 week, and I'm like, I don't have anything. What am I going to do? And then in a matter of 3 days, I ended up with 6 videos worth of content. It just kind of fell in my lap. Things happen. Like I'll go out, and then magic happens. So that ended up happening. And, but yeah, there's going to be a time where I'm tired, where I get burnt out. They say you're not a real YouTuber until you get burnt out. I am usually burnt out, but I like creating things. Even when I'm tired and it's late at night, I'm like, I don't want to edit. As soon as I start editing, I enjoy it. Not because of comic books, not because of YouTube, because I like making stuff. I like editing. I like that.
I think that's
a
key. Yeah. There's really something to that, to being creative, having some form of creativity 100%. And making, it's definitely 1,000%. An outlet for sure.
Right. So that's what keeps me going. Like, and I'm a musician, like I'm doing that on the weekends and stuff, but it's a different medium for me to do this. Right. So like, again, I love the comic books. I like finding this stuff. I get excited. If I find a really good thing, I have the adrenaline rush. I want to do it. But for the most part, like I said, even when I get tired, for some reason, when I start editing, I'm not tired of it yet. There'll be a day. I guarantee you there'll be a day, hopefully not too soon, where I'm sick or something, where I'm running out. But yeah, one of these days, I deserve a week off, but because I do it so many weeks out, I'm usually pretty good at staggering them. I've learned to split videos when they get too long. That was my wife's suggestion. She's like, well, if you're worried about content, just split the video. I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. So for sure, that's it. So yeah, no, I'm a little burnt out, but not burnt out enough to stop.
Well, that's good because we all love your stuff. So what do you find the work-life balance is like for you? I mean, you are keeping this, somewhat of a fun side thing, but I mean, as it continues to grow, are you finding that you have to kind of juggle a little bit more?
Well, that's the key, I guess. So I am like the busiest person I know. Like everyone's busy, right? Everyone has a lot of stuff going on. But I have a real job. I'm an engineer. I work regular work hours every Every
Yeah.
week, I have 2 children. I'm a musician on the weekends. I play at churches. I was like a Cub Scout leader for years during when I was starting Lunch Money Comics for my son aged out. I do a lot of stuff. Like I'm always busy, and I probably could be around more early mornings, on those weekends when I'm at the flea markets. But like I said, I haven't changed anything I do. Like, I think my wife at first was a little like, "Why are you spending all this time editing?" And then she saw that it was being successful and that people liked it. So the
Right.
trick is, the work-life balance is, I only do it when people are asleep. So not always, but usually I will go like early in the morning for flea markets, yard sales. Kids aren't even really up. I do all my editing late at night. I'm a night owl. I'll be editing tonight till probably 1 in the morning. That's when I do all this stuff, right?
Speaking my language there, brother.
That's what
Night
you have
owls
to.
unite, man.
I do not sleep.
1 or 2 in the morning is kind of my average bedtime. So
that's when I get my best work done.
Yeah, same.
So that's what I do. I just try to have it not, mess around with the other stuff. And again, like I think I'm old enough. I feel like, and experienced enough. Like I have a pretty good work-life balance. Like I know when I'm spending too much time on something. I know when, like, I don't bite off more than I can chew. I know if like, okay, that video is gonna do. Nah, it's not worth it. I'm gonna change my mind. I don't want it to impede family life. So I don't. That's it. And I've stuck with it. And I've been lucky in that regard. So.
Awesome, man. Well, I know how busy you are. I know you got some editing to get to. So before we sign off, I wanted to give you the opportunity, let everybody know where they can find you on the socials and the YouTube channel and everything. I mean, most people listening probably have heard of you and are probably already following, but we don't want to, take it for granted that they are. So go ahead and let everybody know where they can find you.
Sure. Lunch Money Comics on YouTube should show up on a Google search. It's just type in Lunch Money Comics. And you can find me on Instagram under Lunch Money Comics IG. And that's because Instagram screwed up my first attempt at making an IG account. So had to add the IG there. So those are really the only 2 places. I don't have a Facebook page or anything like that. So and people hit me up all the time on Instagram. If they want to chat me up, I love talking with people. Like I said, that's why I started the channel. So hit me up. Give me tell me what you're into, and it's fun.
I really enjoyed having you on. I would definitely like to have you on again. I have a feeling we have a lot of things in common and could probably sit on here for way too long. So
this is how those friendships start. I always start with like a live thing, and then the camera goes off, and forget it. You're up to the races talking about everything.
Speaking of this community and these friendships, remind me to show you when we go off air here something I made for Colossus Collector that I'm going to surprise him with.
Ooh,
so
exciting.
when he hears this on Monday, he's going to be excited.
All right. I can't wait to see it.
All right, Mike. Well, thank you again. Hang out with me here for a moment. I'm going to do my little spiel and my outro. Just want to remind everybody to check out the video version on YouTube. People like Mike always have amazing comics behind them and menus signed by Walt Simonson and all sorts of unique stuff. So I always recommend checking out the video version, youtube.com/@Nerdy Podcast can be listened to on any major podcast platform. If you enjoy it, give us a subscribe, a like, a review. All that stuff is really cool. I do this for fun, but it's always nice to see that people are enjoying it. All right, everybody. Until next time, keep it nerdy.